Welcome back to the Talos of Tech podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, Mike and I have now ordered, I think, our new iPhones. And of course, we had an Apple event since the last time we spoke. So there's a lot of things to dive into today. But I need to check in. Mike, what did you order? What's been reserved so far?
I ordered a 5S, and it's in impeccable condition. Nah. I kind of made
you could trade that in.
Yeah, right. I don't.
It's a win for the environment.
I don't know how it is at that point. It's pretty old. I made a little bit of a boo-boo this morning when I was watching you on the stream, and I was reserving the iPhone. I guess to kind of set the stage in a way.
The
center stage, or managing the stage. It didn't take me long on the computer or on the desktop to have the store open for me, which was a little bit interesting compared to you, where it took you I think 5 or 6 minutes to get in.
Yeah,
and I also had the phone on the app ready to open as well, and that took 9 or 10 minutes to open the store, which was insane.
Really?
Yeah, enough to where if I were to just rely on the phone, I would have missed many windows. But at least on the studio, I went through the process, chose a silver 14 Pro.
I like the silver.
Yeah, well, I figured, my 5S right here is, I think, the midnight or whatever. I don't know what they called it back in the day. Just maybe
I think
black.
It was space gray.
Space gray or black.
Yeah.
And then with my phone currently, which I'm probably not gonna take out of the case, it's the midnight green.
Right.
And so I'm figuring, I'm not really digging the Thanos purple or.
No, I wasn't either.
Yeah, the gold wasn't really as flashy, or it was maybe too flashy. I'm a little bit more of a fan of the Starlight, where it's a hidden gold. It's a little bit more silvery or champagne in a way.
Yeah, champagne.
Champagne.
He puts the pain in champagne.
Okay.
So those silver,
colors,
what storage?
Yeah, so I went with silver because I don't really want a black phone because I live in California and everything's hot, and also I've already owned a black phone. I got the 512 because I've been slowly increasing in size over the years from my iPhones. I think I want to say this is a 64 gig 5S. And then probably 64 gig. The 11 Pro was a 256 gig, and I'm running up on the edge of storage on that, in which with my current camera taking habits, in which I take a lot of photos, I'm finding that I need more storage, or at least I'd like another bit of storage. And what I'm finding is that the 5S has lasted pretty long enough to where I backed up all the photos on it onto the studio recently, and there was no file corruption issues. It's a nice little SSD.
That's good.
And so I'm like, well, if this can work as an SSD, I can basically use the 11 Pro as an SSD. Why not have a 512 gigabyte SSD with my next phone whenever I upgrade to the next phone after that? So I'm adding in that overhead for the future of, I know I'm going to be taking a bunch of photos. Let's store it in something that, can hold photos for a decent amount of time. So that way my actual SSDs don't get too much of a strain with, I don't know how big they are. Maybe around, I guess 1 terabyte.
Probably bigger. Yeah, that makes sense.
Should have gone to
So did the pricing have any effect on your storage choice? Because we were all wrong, right? You wrote down all of our price predictions, and I think everyone was wrong.
Yes. So I guess for reference, what was it? You guys thought it was going to be $850. Actually, yeah, you agreed on basically everything. $850 for the 14, $999 or $950 for the Max, or the.
Yep. Both wrong.
Sorry, for
the Plus.
The Plus, yeah. We didn't know it was the
Now
Plus
it's the
yet.
Plus.
The $1099 for the Pro, and then $1249 for the Pro Max. How mine spec'd out to be is, because I got the Silver Pro with 512 gigabytes, it went up to 1,200 or something like that. So I was basically...
But that was was that what you expected it to cost?
Yes. I was more than willing to pay for that, just because I'm kind of tired of the 11 Pro at this point. I also think that
I
the
bet.
upgrade is worth it, in my opinion. There's a lot we're
Mm-hmm.
going to be talking about a lot because we also had the event earlier in the week.
There's a lot of things to go over.
Yeah, but I felt the improvements that they said on stage after a while. I wasn't really a fan of the colors. I was a little bit turned off by that. But once they got into the new UI, how they're handling what the eye hole used to be and what kind of is now, and
the dynamic island. Are you a fan of the island approach?
I think it's a really smart idea. I think
Yeah,
Apple hit it out of the
too.
park with integrating something useful with something that's kind of a hindrance on viewing. Yeah, it's still going to be there when you're watching videos, but you're not watching videos all the time. And even so, if you're watching them on your cell phone, I don't think there's really like a big need to see everything on the screen because you're already looking at a small screen, even if you got the Pro Max.
True.
It's still a decently small screen. If you want to actually see everything in every single pixel, get yourself an iPad or watch it on a computer or something else. Or your
TV.
MacBook.
Yeah.
Or your TV.
If you care about that viewing experience so much.
Exactly.
No, that's true.
That's
That's a
why I
good
think,
point.
you're not going to be watching, like, I don't know, Thor, Love and Thunder on it on the flight. And if you are, you're going to be watching it with a better screen than what they provide you on the flight. And
Right, those screens are always terrible.
Yeah, and that dynamic island isn't really going to intrude too much, in which I think it'll just be in pill form at that point. But anyways, I felt that the upgrades were worth it for the price that I was paying for this morning. Though I guess I haven't paid yet because it's still processing.
It's an agreement.
Yeah, the boo-boo that I made was I ordered it for delivery. And I didn't realize I could pick it up in store for some reason, or at least it just went past my mind. And I didn't think, I could pick it up in store at like 8 a.m. so I can have it for the podcast, I think, this time next week. So that's a tad bit of a bummer. I think you'll probably have it next week, in which I'm excited to see hear about your thoughts on it. But I guess people just have to wait for my 1 week review in 2 weeks, I guess.
Yeah, we might have to push the recording time anyway, because my window for check-in is still scheduled for like 8:15 in the morning, so I probably won't be able to record at the usual time next week. But yeah, I'm excited to see it in person, just because the dynamic island totally blew my expectations out of the water. It was way cooler than I thought it was going to be. I didn't realize they could turn a camera cutout into a feature. I thought it was just going to be like the notch where they just kind of pretend it's not there and they're just like, oh yeah, that's just the way it looks. But now it's like, do we want them to get rid of the pill at this point? Like, if it, like, you could probably keep the dynamic island going even if all the cameras were underneath the display. But I'm just curious if, like, to me, this was evidence that they're probably planning on keeping the cutout for many years to come at this point. Now that they're kind of embracing it in the software, there's not, in my opinion, a huge rush to remove the pill in a hurry or anything.
Sure.
Like, they can take their time.
I think that's what I speculated on last week, is that Apple doesn't necessarily do like 1 year features necessarily.
Right.
I think maybe the closest thing was like 3D Touch, if I remember right, and that was like, maybe that was over a couple of years. So they didn't even abandon that for too long. So I didn't foresee the pill going away immediately after this year unless people had a very negative reaction towards it to where they lost sales. But because Apple made it very appealing with the features that they built around this cutout and make it look like it's integrated in there without any intrusion, along with the price of the phone not changing, it's a pretty good deal in my opinion. And I do think that this, again, will probably be the next best year for iPhone sales. And it'll get overshadowed probably greatly by next year's with the changes that will probably come with the 15. But I think Apple did a great job with the event that they that they brought us earlier in the week.
Pretty packed. Yeah. No, it was a fun event. There wasn't too much fluff. There was just a lot of new, interesting info. I love the changes to the Apple Watch line. I love the upgrades to the AirPods Pro too. And we're all lucky because we're in the U.S., so we don't see the price hikes. But overseas, they've been quite bad. And I tried to mention that in my video, but I don't think I mentioned it soon enough because I still got a million comments saying, there's price hikes here, though. And it's like, okay, I'm sorry. I'm in the U.S. market. Most of my audience is the U.S. market, so that's what I was referring to. But yes, I do apologize to everyone outside of the U.S. that's dealing with the price hikes, although I don't really think they're Apple's fault. I think it's more of a issue with currency conversion and inflation hitting other currencies a lot harder than ours, which is hard to believe, but
yeah,
it's still
and
a
the value
bummer.
overall as well. So I was looking at this list, and yeah, we got 4 iPhones like we predicted last week, and 3 Apple Watches, of course.
Yep, there were 3.
We didn't get an iPad. We didn't get a Ted Lasso trailer, but we did get like a little, not a sneak peek, but a little not even a promo, just like a nod or a teaser for Severance Season 2 at the end. So
yeah,
maybe we get some points on that for adding points to this.
I love how people reacted to that, basically. It was like a 2-second shot, which there was a Easter egg for during the AirPods Pro 2 demo. I realized when I went back and watched it, she's like tuning out things on the subway train, and you can see the lady from Severance as she's testing out the AirPods, and I was like, oh, I didn't notice that on the first time. But a bunch of people were just like, oh, Apple Glass, confirmed. There's one more thing. It's like, where did you get Apple Glass from that? It's a lady about to get on a train. And they were like, oh, it's confirmed. What does it mean? What does it mean? It's TV Plus. Don't worry. Don't freak out. It's just TV Plus stuff.
Yeah.
So you just got the new iPhone then? No watches or AirPods for you?
I guess going to the event or talking more about the event, the Apple Watch Ultra, I want to say the Pro because of the leaks and all that we've been talking about and discussing for a while. The Apple Watch Ultra seems like a really cool watch. And
yeah.
I mean, from what you guys can tell from the EV podcast, I'm not too shy of uglier designs in a way, as long as it serves a purpose, kind of like you, Drew. And I think the Apple Watch Ultra is a beautiful product with how much you can do with that device. You can dive 100 plus feet deep. You can climb with it and not worry about it getting scuffed too much. You can go into desert and live there for about 60 hours or something like that. It'll give you all that better life.
Design.
I think the design's great. I'm not too sure about the programmable button. I don't think that's necessary, but and then also the crown guard. I feel like you could easily get some foreign objects kind of stuck in there, but again, I haven't seen the design up close, so I'd have to look more into it.
Yeah, the gap between the crown and the guard could get dirty. I think.
You could get some stuff jammed in there and or dirty, so that's why
that's true.
I'm a little bit iffy on that design, but I get it when they explained, we have it kind of pushed out a little bit because people who have gloves when they're hiking or climbing or swimming or whatever like that, they need to press a button probably to look at some new information. If they're diving, it's like, I want to see this variable or whatever, or I want to change it to this or something like that, or activate a frequency or something like that. So it makes sense instead of like struggling to get a glove off and then pressing a button wherever you are, inland or sea, on land or in sea, in the land.
I like the orange accents. I thought were cool. It gives off this adventurous vibe, and the fact that there's only one color is, some people are disappointed by that, but I kind of like the simplicity of it. Is it's just titanium, and and that's it, one size. It makes the configurator so much more simple that when you're at checkout, you don't have to like pick out a certain watch band and which size do you want? Do you want cellular or not? It's like, nope, that's it. There's just the Ultra. It's so simple.
Easy for Apple in terms of manufacturing. They don't have to worry about, is this one midnight or is this one silver or anything like that. It's the titanium silver look. That's it. Ship it out with the orange accents.
I wouldn't be surprised if they added to it in future generations. Maybe just for this year, they want to see how it does, see how many people are interested, and then maybe, what do you call it? Do you call it the Apple Watch Ultra Series 2 or the Apple Watch Series 9 Ultra? What would they?
I think it's just the Apple Watch Ultra 2 because it didn't really get a series name with it.
No, you're right. It doesn't say series next to it.
I think it's its own kind of lineup now, kind of like the SE is. I don't know if they even called it the SE 3 or 4 necessarily. I think they just called it SE, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, they call it SE, and then in the tech specs they refer to it as third generation, which isn't really in the marketing. So we call it SE3, but same thing with AirPods Pro. They don't call it 2, but it's referred to as second generation.
Right.
But I picked up some AirPods Pro.
Yeah, what'd you think of the AirPods Pro? Did you think it's well, I guess you don't know if it's actually worth the upgrade yet, but at least you're testing them out to see if they are worth some sort of value to you at least.
I was very pleasantly surprised just for the fact that the price didn't go up. I was anticipating $299 or something like that, and there were still some surprises. I mean, it was a little disappointing that there wasn't a lossless playback, but that's not super important to me. It was just rumored for a while, so I know that there's audio files that we're kind of hoping for improvements there. Although I do think the new iPhones and the new AirPods have Bluetooth 5.3, which should support some improved energy consumption / bit rates to be improved. I'm not sure if it'll quite do lossless like people were hoping, but the surprise to me was the volume control thing. People have been asking for that for years, a way to finally just change the volume right off the pod itself, and the fact that they've found a way to do that is awesome. The battery life is improved. It's not great, it's just now on par with AirPods 3, but those had good battery life too. And also another surprise I was not expecting was the Apple Watch charge puck can also charge the AirPods. I was like, you can do that? Like, why weren't we doing this before?
This just makes me more confused about what you can interchange with that puck, right? Because if it can charge a AirPod case, why not like a Magic Mouse, right? Like,
right, yeah,
you could probably build in some magnets or something like that, or maybe not even necessarily magnets, but at least a charger that has somewhat of that ring at the bottom of it.
True.
Also, viewers, if you're watching, yes, I still have the iMac. It's not gone away yet. I'm holding up a green mouse. On it. But, I mean, you could do that with a Magic Mouse, maybe not easily, but if you could do it with an AirPods case, why not with a Magic Mouse, or even bring it further to other things?
AirTag.
Sure, why not? Nice. Yeah, just stick an AirTag on
it. I know people don't agree with me on that one, but I would still prefer a rechargeable AirTag over a replaceable battery, but that's just me. I'm weird. But yeah, I was pleasantly surprised with the pricing. Of course, I want to hear them as well. They're saying the noise cancellation is like 2 times better than before. I don't know how that's possible because it's already super good.
I don't think anyone will notice if they're listening to Spotify, since the quality on there isn't the best, and there's a lot of people that use Spotify. I use it, but I'm sure if you have Apple Music or Tidal or something else, you'll get maybe a more dynamic experience, which I'm curious to see if people notice that, or it's a little bit more of a, what do you call it? A
placebo?
Placebo, thank you. Yes, like a placebo in a way, where they're like, these are the new ones. Oh, yes, I can hear more. And
so they must sound better, right?
They must sound better.
Where in reality, a lot of the time, it's just your previous headphones are old, and they've collected a lot of earwax and debris in those little vents and stuff, and that's made them not sound as good as day one, because I definitely noticed an improvement in sound quality when I got these 2 replaced. Even though it was the same generation of AirPods Pro, when I put them in, I was like, whoa, this sounds nice. So there is, I think you're right, there's definitely a little bit of new factor. These sound new, that sounds better. But AirPods, because their batteries are so small, degrade pretty fast relative to other tech, which is why that battery life is so important to me. So that was the main thing I was interested in. Just give it better battery life, and it should be a win. And the fact that we get other stuff along with it is great too.
A new chip in it, and not that as well. It didn't really change too much in design either. So I think don't break what isn't fixed necessarily, but improve where you can. And I think that's what they followed with the AirPods, at least, pretty well. And decided to make
what isn't fixed.
Yeah, but they did also go a little bit more crazy with the watch instead of being a little bit more conservative with like, we just made it super tough. Oh no, we actually include like a giant side bump on it, and then
I think the battery life of the Ultra is really what's going to win it over for a ton of people. Like, I think a bunch of people that aren't super active, that aren't scuba diving or hiking, are still going to buy the Ultra just for the battery life alone.
That was the tempting thing for me, because I'm like, my watch doesn't last it almost doesn't last the whole day if I actually used it as a workout machine. It wouldn't last the day. It would have to get charged halfway through, and even when I don't use it throughout the day when I'm just sitting at my cubicle at work, it dies at the end of the day. So I'm like, okay, well, do I need a new Apple Watch? Probably not. Do I want one?
You could try the new low power mode when that comes out.
That's what I'm thinking that will save me. They said that low power mode is coming to Series 4 and onward. I thought, okay,
right.
Well, at least there's some upgrade for me in that regard because I'm not checking my watch 24/7, and it still retains some features even when in low power mode.
Right.
So I'm figuring, okay, well, maybe that's worth it. And also, I'm already buying a new iPhone, and I just bought a new computer. I don't think I need to buy another expensive Apple product.
I know your bank account is being.
It's been vampired at this point. Yeah, it's all the electrons have been sucked dry out of it, and so now now it needs low power mode. But
a refurbished Ultra might be a decent buy.
That's what I'm thinking, because I think Series 7 right now, I think that they might be sold out at this point. But they were coming in at pretty good prices, and I thought, wow, like the Series 8 isn't too much of a change, in which I think that's what we predicted. It's that Series 8
it's like almost identical.
Well, I'm just like, it's even different from like my watch. I'm trying to look at like all the differences. I'm like, I can't see too many besides like maybe the black bezel. So
yeah, the bezel's thinner, but
yeah,
I mean,
I guess
to me that's a
black
big deal.
Bezel, that's maybe something that I'm looking forward to with hopefully a second Apple Watch Ultra. Like the next iteration of it is a little bit less bezel on it because it looked like I had a little bit of thickness on the edges.
It is kind of chunk. It is.
It's already 49 millimeter, but it would be nice to use all of that screen real estate, or as much as you can. And
that's why I'm not convinced I want to upgrade to the Ultra as much as I love it. It feels like I think the bezel, as well as I read this thing online, and I don't know this for sure. I need to wait till I get it in person, but on the MagSafe Duo web page, it does not list the Apple Watch Ultra as compatible. And it does list the Series 8. And I think it even lists I don't think it lists the SE2. So it might just be something they forgot to add to the compatibility page. But
sure,
as small as a detail as that sounds, it is kind of a deal breaker for me because of how much I use MagSafe Duo every day and on trips. Like, if that watch has a hard time mounting, or it's probably one of those things where it works if you put the puck down,
right,
and it'll charge.
And hopefully
but if
the straps don't fling it upward or whatever.
Oh yeah, the straps too. See, that's why I don't like my MagSafe Duo watch charger is always up, because I don't like the bands stretching out across the nightstand, or if you have a loop band, you have to like unfold it the other way to get it to charge right. So if the Ultra is so bulky and so big that I can't leave it in nightstand mode, because I do use my watch like a clock,
like an alarm
a lot of the time. Yeah, it's like that would kind of annoy me, especially if I was going to own it for a long time. And I'm very happy about the improved battery life, but I don't have any battery issues with my current watch. It gets me through the day fine, and I'm happy with the sapphire glass on this one because of how durable it is. It still looks pristine after a year of ownership. And the Series 8 is, in my opinion, the smallest Apple Watch upgrade of all time. Like, the Ultra has brought a lot of attention and a lot of discussion to the Apple Watch line. So that's the big story. That's what everyone wants to talk about. But as far as Series 7 to Series 8, I literally do not think there was ever as minor of a change in the Apple Watch lineup. Like, this was so incredibly like, okay, women that want to track their ovulation strategy, but it only works at nighttime because the temperature sensor's not that accurate. So it's like, it's measuring differences in body temperature, but it's not like a thermometer replacement. Like, I wonder what my body temperature is. No,
epidural
that's not how
versus
it works.
Internal is very different. So
yes,
you'll have to. It'd have to be something. You'd have to have the watch integrated with you, or it'd have to have some weird way of being able. Yes, like that's still epidural
but it does,
in a way.
Based on how they pitched it, it does not sound like it's a very accurate body temperature monitor.
No, I mean,
it's just for
even
like
so,
slight variation.
It's still kind of the same with the rest of the features, right? It's like, oh, your atrial fib, or you may have had an atrial fib. I can't say the word. Basically, you may have had a stroke or a heart attack or something like that. You might want to consult a doctor.
You may have had a heart attack last night.
You may have. You don't know. But still, like, it's still like it's a grain of salt of what. Oh no. Anyways.
Oh no. Watch has death detection.
It kind of does, right? Because it's got the car crash sensor now.
Yeah. How did you feel about that? Does that?
I ain't gonna test it
for that. Or? People were asking me to test it.
I mean, you technically do have a car that you could, if you feasibly wanted to. I don't think
the old car.
Yeah, the Sonata. You could definitely wreck that. Put your phone in there and see if it does it. But then now you have to deal with, like, I guess you'd have to have police on call, let them know, like, hey, I'm going to test this feature for my business. And
I don't know. I feel like
I don't know.
The commonness of that scenario is particularly rare. Not just a car crash in itself, but specifically a car crash where you are incapacitated. Those are two different things. Like, okay, if you're in a car crash but you're still, like, awake, you can call the police. Like, you could call 911. It's not like there's no way to call the police if you're in a car crash and you don't have an Apple Watch Series 8 or an iPhone 14. What do I do? I didn't buy the latest iPhone. You know, it's not that. It's like, okay, it's specifically you're in a really bad car crash to the point that you cannot call 911 and you are, like, out of it. And also the other person involved is not calling 911 because they're out of it, or maybe it wasn't with another car.
Or they sped off or something like that.
You drove off a cliff and there's no one else.
I hate when that happens.
So it's like, I appreciate that it's there because even if this only gets used on 0.001% of Apple Watch owners, it could be a life saved. That could be life or death to that one person. Whether or not, I would say most people should spend the extra money on the Series 8 just so they can have that detection. That's where it's a little fuzzy to me because it's like, okay, I think a very, very large percentage of people that buy the Series 8 will never use that feature. Like,
hopefully
over 99%. Hopefully, yeah. But, because it's not just car crashes, right? It's a very specific type of car crash that would be useful. But it's a very nice to have in that scenario, but I'm sorry, I just don't think it's common enough to say that it's worth spending the extra $100 or $200. It's like a very, very niche insurance policy that you're paying for, essentially. And I mean, in those situations where you can't call 911 because you're way out in the middle of nowhere, or you drove off a cliff or whatever, like, also assuming you have reception in that area is another, like, maybe, well, hopefully, or is the car crash so bad that your watch is broken? You know, like, there's other factors. There's so rare of a circumstance that I'm like, you probably don't need to spend. Like, the Series 7 is going for so cheap elsewhere now, and, you know, I guess I just don't see it as worth it, but it will probably save lives. Maybe not a lot, but some.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see also how sensitive it is. I know that the engineers have probably made it so that it's more of like a very sudden deceleration, not enough to where like FSD beta or anything else or like hard braking would necessarily trigger it. But
yeah,
if people do try testing it out, I'm very curious to see what situations they put it in to trigger it. But
or like, could you get a false positive? Like, could you accidentally activate? Like, if I was doing this or something, if I was like moving my hands around and I like applied a bunch of G-force to, you know, I was hammering or something, could it go off like that, or have they trained it so well that it won't fall for that?
Good question. Also, another one that I think of that'd be interesting is dropping it when skydiving, seeing if it triggers then. Or like if you're skydiving and then parachuting, that's a rapid deceleration, so I wonder if it might trigger there.
Or you could be on a plane, on like a takeoff, or when you're landing, there's some hard G-force moments, and yeah, they said they had like 1 million. What was it? they had some crazy high testing number. They were like 1,000,000 hours worth of training or 1,000,000 miles. I can't remember. I got to pull it up.
Yeah, I'd have to look
It
at
was
it
crazy.
again. But I don't know. I do think it's, like you said, it's a smart feature to have, and hopefully no one uses it or needs it. But also it's a bit niche, where you have to figure
Very
out
niche.
like if it's a bad crash to where you get knocked out. What if it turns into something like what happened with Paul Walker, where there is no saving that situation, even if you have authorities like 2 or 3 blocks away, and they get this
True.
emergency notification that there's been a crash, call the paramedics and firemen and all that. The car might be on fire by the point that they get there. And that's like the best scenario where like you're not too far from emergency services versus being out on like a mountain road and falling off a cliff.
Yeah.
It is a good way to have that just in case like no one knows you're there, right?
True.
But the watch does, and the watch has told emergency services. But if you fall off a cliff in your car, the likelihood of you surviving is slim. So it's
that's true.
It's
There's a lot of
maybe a better
circumstances
gauge.
where it'll go off, but it won't matter that it went off, basically.
Right.
It'll be too late. So I'm not saying they shouldn't have added it. It's
No.
fine that they added it. It's just the number of people that are like, should I get a Series 7 or a Series 8? I'm pretty much always going to say Series 7. But yeah, I pulled it up on the website.
Okay.
They said it's 1,000,000 hours of real-world driving and crash data, which is quite a bit. I'd love to see the testing for that. They just crash cars over and over again just to see if it goes off at the right amount or
Right.
what have you.
You have like all these engineers coming from like Tesla, and everyone's thinking, oh, it's the Apple car. They're making the Apple car. No, they have engineers crashing cars all day. Just like, how was attempt
They're not making a
number
car.
358,496? It did all right. I mean, it kind of detected a little bit too early, or it didn't detect it at all.
Just a
Next Tesla.
dummy model wearing a watch.
Right.
They just drive the car down the track.
I wonder
That's kinda
where
funny.
they tested it, right? Because it's not just like
Yeah.
in like their test bed area in Cupertino or somewhere else. Like they feasibly
right inside.
probably
It's in
threw
that
a lot
green
of
park.
cars either off of cranes at a port or off
Oh,
a
yeah.
cliff maybe to see how well it does. So
They drive it into the big rainbow in the middle of Apple campus.
it looked okay on the promo at the beginning, but
Oh
maybe
yeah,
it's a
they
new
fixed it
rainbow.
up.
Okay.
No,
And
that
the
was
lawn as
all
well.
CG. That was like Mandalorian. It was like a screen box. Tim Cook wasn't there at all. It was all fake.
What do they call it? I totally forget. It's the Sky Stage? No, I totally forget what they call that area. Or the
Steve Jobs Theater?
No, so there's
That's
the
one of
Steve
them.
Jobs Theater, but like the one that they use on Mandalorian, it's
Oh. I thought they called it the screen box or something.
is it the Screen Box? I think it's
Maybe it's
something a little bit more mystifying or a little bit more
Yeah.
dynamic islandy type of name.
it's a dynamic cube. Maybe
Dynamic
we should call this isn't the notch. This is the static peninsula.
Right. And then you got the dynamic
Doesn't do
island or
anything.
whatever. Yeah,
What did you think of talking about iPhones again? Like
sure.
the 14 Plus and the 14 being so similar to the 13 series. Do you think Apple could have tried harder with the 14 series, or do you think there's like a very addressable market with the 14s that they're going for?
If I recall correctly, they basically just took the chips from the 13 Pros and put it in the 14 regulars, which
Yeah.
I thought they already did already, because that makes sense, right? You're basically getting like the next gen stuff if you get the Pro, and if you're getting the...
It's kind of confusing because there's like they refer to it as A15 chip, but then there's multiple versions. Like your iPad Mini has an A15 chip, but that's not the same A15 chip that's in my iPhone, which is also not the same A15 that is in iPhone 13, the non-Pro. So they're like, this is A15, but this one has a 5-core GPU, and this one has a 4-core GPU, and this one has 4 gigs of RAM, and this one has 6 gigs of RAM. And so they basically put the best version of A15 in the new iPhone 14, but
That's okay to me.
it's still...
I see no
Okay,
issue with it,
all right.
because if you're getting a regular iPhone 14, you're not looking for that huge performance increase. You're looking at
That's true.
just the next iPhone, and it's very similar to the 13, but that's how smartphones are going, I don't know why anyone would expect such a major increase necessarily, unless it's something like Apple took a break for a year, which doesn't make sense. Why would they take a break for a year on the iPhone?
Yeah, I don't think they would either.
Only
did you see the Eve Jobs meme?
Eve Jobs. No.
So Steve Jobs' daughter was posting memes about how the iPhone 14 is identical to the 13. So people were turning that into a big story because it's like, oh, look, even she doesn't like. And it's like, look around the phone world, though. I feel like there's a lot of backlash because everybody buys iPhones, and maybe it's because there's a lot of everyday people that normally don't follow the tech space that suddenly start watching the tech space when a new iPhone gets launched. But the S22 does not look very different from the S21, which did not look very different from the S20. The Pixel 7 does not look that different from the Pixel 6. There's like minor camera bump changes here and there. The Z Fold 4 does not look that different from the Z Fold 3. Like, even Samsung, who's mocking about lack of innovation, is like, okay, you did your foldable thing, but you're on the same incremental refinement game too. Yeah. Don't act like every single time you make a new foldable with a slightly different chip and a slightly improved camera, that's innovation.
Right.
It's like, okay, you can say innovation when you introduce like a brand new foldable, but you've been introducing these foldables for like 4 years now. Mm-hmm. It's not new anymore. It's still 4-year-old tech that you're just beefing up and providing with a little bit better specs, which is exactly what Apple's doing. So that's what kills me about the joking and the memeing about like, oh, they're not different and it looks the same as before. It's like, yeah, that's just the industry now.
It's the same with cars as well. You're not seeing a new souped up car every single year from Toyota of the same model. You're not seeing the Yaris get crazy upgrades every single year. You're not seeing the Model 3 get... You are seeing the Model 3 get upgrades every year, but it's not like apparent on the outside. It's all inside on it. And that's the same with... Again, it's always the comparison with Teslas and or automotive with smartphones and all that in tech. But it is very applicable to this situation where you're not getting something spectacularly new every single cycle. Like, there are those changes, like the dynamic island.
To me, that was a huge deal. I thought that was great.
Right, and you do get some of those facelifts, but it's not like you get a huge facelift and you also get a huge improvement every single year. The closest you got to that was the new M chips, where it's like, oh, yes.
Right.
We put the new Mac or the Macs get this cool new M chip that increased the performance crazy. And then when it came to M2, it's like, well, why isn't there a crazy increase with this? It's like, well, it's still the M chip. It's still really good. It's just a new incremental upgrade to it. And it does a little bit more, and sometimes it does
it's
a little bit
not like
less.
An architecture shift anymore. Now it's just refinement.
You can't keep on changing the assembly line every single year. Or let me rephrase. You can't keep on changing the product internally and externally every single year because that's not feasible financially. And also engineering-wise, like, engineers can only do so much. They have to recycle some designs, or else it's going to cost the whole company a whole lot of money and a whole lot of time. Even at my work, we recycle some designs. But it's not like we're just slapping a sticker on it and like, see, it's new. We are doing some optimization on it, but it's nothing too crazy. So it stands to reason, same with the iPhones. We do get these cool facelifts, and it's nice from time to time with like the dynamic island, and then next year possibly or most likely the USB-C port. But it's not like the software needs to get that same crazy upgrade that year. That's, I think, for mainly like S years, or maybe not S years, but like when the company finds a way to get a huge performance increase. And sometimes they do, and sometimes they don't, and that's all right. It's just, that's the game of innovation. Sometimes you get a leap forward, sometimes you just get a step. And at least it's a step.
Right.
Versus we changed the exterior, but the interior is still the same. It's like, okay, well...
Yeah, and like, what can they even like, if they put the camera bump in a different place, is that innovation? Or even if they got rid of the cameras on the front entirely and there was no pill at all, are you going to use your phone differently? I mean, it's a technological marvel, I guess. It's cool that you can do it underneath the display, but it's not like there's no such thing as these big, massive upgrade. So many people in the live stream this morning told me that they ordered the new iPhone off their Z Fold.
Nice.
Which I thought was funny. It's like, I'm hearing all these people say like, oh yeah, the phone's cool, whatever. Ready for my iPhone again.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I wanted to get data on how many people that buy a foldable have more than one phone. And that's not like their only option. They like buy one because it's cool and they like to try out smartphones, and then they use that for a little while until there's another new thing, and then they try that for a while. So
sure,
it's so ironic to me because that meme of the guy with the shirt, he's getting out of the box and he's already wearing that shirt, and he's like, yeah, I got it. And it says iPhone 14 and iPhone 13.
Yeah.
They've been using that meme for like 10 years now. Like, I remember seeing that with the iPhone 6 and the 6S.
Yeah.
And you're complaining, your argument in the meme is that there's a lack of originality. And yet you are using a 10-year-old meme for every single...
Are you getting
it? Are you? It's like you're complaining about lack of originality while also using super old memes that you can't like get past. Every year they post the exact same meme. Oh, it's the same as last year. Oh, it's the same as last year. It's like, yeah, and so are the memes. Like, you're just as unoriginal as Apple is. It's just slight refinement.
I don't know.
Just change the number.
To me, it's more like a bedrock of what Apple does with their products, or especially the iPhones. Like, it doesn't change as much the next year, so you have that option to skip upgrading. So it's actually saving you money because you're not feeling that you're missing too much on the next upgrade, and you still get the software. You get the software support for several years. So you're not really missing out on much as long as like you're okay with your camera aging a little bit. Yeah, it still takes good photos, but it's not as good as the next the next camera that they put in the next phone. But that's okay. You've made that sacrifice when you bought your phone. And if you want to make the sacrifice to make that jump financially, that's okay. That's fine. Go for it. You have that freedom. I think that's what's great about technology is that we've got this freedom to pick and choose what we want, and we can criticize what we want as well, which is great because criticism breeds new products, or at least more creative means to sell a product, in which go for it, please. We need more creativity in the world. So to criticize Apple on their lack of creativity with the iPhone, I think it's warranted, but at the same time, I don't know what you're expecting at this point because the iPhone has been the same for so long, and it just makes those small steps. It's never really been a big step phone. So if you don't want, or if you don't like it, okay, keep with your current iPhone, because I know you probably have an iPhone and you're sticking with it. Or if you're that angry about it and you don't want to support Apple's mission, go for another phone. Try out the Z Fold.
Yeah, you've got choices. You've got Androids to choose from. But what's funny is that whenever I ask people, it's like, okay, well, what do you want them to do? Like, what drastically different thing? It's like, oh, well, they should make a foldable because, Samsung's mocking them on Twitter. We've had a Fold for this many years. And then it's like, okay, so if Apple made a foldable, then you would all complain that it's too expensive. It's $1,800. That's so much. Or that Samsung already came up with this, so you couldn't win if they did that. Or you'd say, oh, they should make the camera hole smaller so that it looks like every Android on the market. And I think what was really creative, dare I say innovative, about Dynamic Island is they found a way to differentiate the phone design from everybody else.
Right.
You could just have a pill cut out like all Android phones do and just leave it up there and you don't think about it. But they intentionally found a way to incorporate widgets and controls and have it dynamically adjust depending on what the phone's doing, to the point now that it's a feature. Now people are like, oh, well, I want that. I want to be able to do that. And that's why I don't compare it at all. It's like, Android's had this. No, you haven't had Dynamic Island. You've had a camera cutout. That's not the same thing, because software does make a difference. It does have an impact. So I think that Apple found a way to stand out, which I applaud. And especially when we're in a world where all smartphones look incredibly similar. And I think Apple, just because they are like the mainstream brand, that's what a lot of people buy, they get the blunt of smartphones are the same every year criticism. And really the only people following new Android launches consistently are typically people that are a bit more techy, a bit more engaged in the tech community. That's why people excuse it, and you don't hear too much complaining about why this Galaxy is pretty similar to the last one, or this Pixel's pretty much the same as the last Pixel.
Sure.
And it's like an unfair, it's a double standard. That's the term. It feels like a double standard.
Yeah, I'm also in the camp that I'd love to see Apple make a foldable phone if they can allocate the resources, because they're already allocating all of their engineers, all of their marketing and everything into the iPhone right now. And if they can either slice off a little bit of that and still maintain the quality that they are with the iPhone and split off to make a iPhone Fold or iFold or whatever, or just establish a new team that's separate, that maybe they stole some engineers from Samsung to help out with what a iFold would look like. Good on them if they can execute it correctly, in which I'm sure that they have a few prototypes, and if they do, that's great. If they don't, whatever. If they can do it and they feel confident about it, sweet, awesome. More things for consumers like us to consider when buying the next year's iPhone, right? Or the next year's iPhone. For many, this new update with the pill design, or the dynamic island design, jeez Louise, it at least is a glimpse at what the iPhone 15 will be, because we'd make these small incremental changes, and this is the new look. And like we said before, they're probably going to stick with this look for a while, just for how much they can squeeze out of it in terms of utility with all the cool things they can do on the top, because they've kind of been moving away from things out of reach, because they recognize that phones are getting big. So with notifications, they're kind of appearing on the bottom. And the same with when you're actually using the phone, you're usually, I mean, you could be using one hand, but like when you're, I don't know, swiping through different apps and all that, you can feasibly go and touch the top to change the music or airdrop something. And so the ways they can apply that to the next generation in the 15 and the 16 and the 17, the sky's the limit. So it's nice seeing what they do with the 14 to get a glimpse of what the 15 and 16 and how many others will look like. So if you're not a fan of the 14, just because nothing changed much, that's all right. You've got many more things to look forward to with the 15. And if you're still not looking forward to it, I don't know why you're waiting on Apple to make something new when they've always been making the same thing every single year, at least with the iPhone. And it's
been a refinement process kind of from the beginning. Even in the Steve Jobs days, he was around for the 3GS. He was around for the 4S. You know, he was around for iPad 2, I think. He was not above recycling design for the sake of, let's just make it a bit faster and more efficient. We don't have to reinvent the wheel every year. But on that subject of iPhone 14 not being different enough, I wanted to ask you this, because there was a lot of talk on the podcast about what iPhones are going to stick around, and now we have the answer. The 12 mini was killed off, but the 13 mini is still there, and the regular 13.
No, so your statement is invalid.
What did I say?
You said, so this was back when we didn't know what M2 was yet, and you said 15 to 20% increase, in which you're right on that. But you also claimed that 13 regulars getting discontinued, in which you backpedaled on right before the event. In the last podcast, you said
backpedaled earlier.
Well, but you did. You backpedaled and said, I don't think it will get discontinued. And your gut was right before the event, because we watched the event. The 13 stayed, and the 13 mini stayed.
Yeah.
The 13
at a
Pros,
price reduction too
got eliminated, because that's what they do with the Pros every year. But
yeah,
they reduced the price, which is pretty good. And they still kept the 12. They killed off the mini, but you can get that refurbished. But the 12
I think they were sold out, actually. I did. I think I directed too many people, because I did my whole video on, this is the real iPhone SE. When I posted that video, the refurbished 12 mini was $529, which I thought was a great deal. And then after the event, they reduced it to $439. And I was like, whoa, it was like $10 more than the SE3. And I was like, absolutely worth it. $10 more for all of the better display, better camera, better everything. I was like, yeah, like no one should buy the SE3. But then shortly after the event, I checked, and now I cannot find a single refurbished 12 mini on the Apple Store app. So I think I drew too much attention to it. So I guess maybe the Talos of Tech community may have gotten it, taken advantage of it. But anyway, what I was going to ask you is the iPhone 13 is still around at a reduced price.
Sure.
And very similar to the 14. Is there anyone in particular you could see yourself saying you should get the 14 instead of saving $100 and getting the 13? Like what?
Not my life immediately. Maybe. Actually, no. I know one guy. He's a guy I went to engineering school with, and he's been holding on to his. Oh goodness, what is it? I think it's an S8, because he still has the fingerprint scanner. Is it? Did I say S8? The iPhone 8.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Why did I say S8? Yeah.
He likes his home button.
He likes his home button. He hasn't gotten anything after that, and he's been loving it. But he's seeing that it's degrading enough to where he might need to get a new phone.
The time has come.
So I think the 13 mini might be perfect because it's still kind of that same form factor. It's just now there's no button, so he can get used to.
It's smaller, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, so he can still at least, I don't know, retain that handheld feel that his old 8 was, but now he's got the new functionality of not having the home button and swiping around and all that. And it's still a pretty good buy, or go for the 12 mini as well if it becomes available again. But from what we saw from the 13's improvements in battery, it might be the better buy, in my opinion. But,
yeah. I mean, between like action mode and the satellite communication feature, which we haven't talked about yet, and
there's a lot.
The slight adding autofocus to the front camera. Like, if we're ignoring the mini for a second, we're just talking iPhone 14, iPhone 13. $100 gap between those two. Should anyone opt for the regular 14, or is this just
if they want the newest iPhone that's being sold today? Go for it. I think that's maybe the beauty, right? If you want the newest thing, buy it. If you don't and you want to save some money, I think that's maybe the beauty of Apple's lineup right now, is that you can get the 13 regular or the mini, and you're not really missing much at all. And you're still saving a good amount of money that you can put towards, I don't know, AirTags if you're in the ecosystem, or something else. Go buy yourself, I don't know, a decent dinner. Something like that.
You can have an iPhone 14 or a 13 and a decent dinner.
Exactly.
That's the side by side. That's kind of where I'm leaning to. The more I think about how similar those two iPhones are, it's like I feel like I just want to tell anybody in the market, like, the pros are separate. That's a different story. But if we're just talking 6.1-inch iPhones, I don't think anyone really should get the 14. And I'm not like sure what that has going for it other than those super rare isolated emergency situations because it also has car crash detection and it has the satellite communication. Could you end up using that? I don't know. Maybe you're a hiker and maybe that's a more common scenario for you, but I'm going to guess most of our listeners aren't. And I noticed during the pre-order this morning, like, no iPhone 14 was getting pushed back in ship time. And I was like, that kind of makes sense. I think I understand why.
Yeah. I mean, if you are a hiker and you need a new phone, like, I guess maybe, but you already have a satellite phone probably, if, like, you're that avid of a hiker and doing all that. But otherwise, like, maybe that's best for those who want to get into hiking and want to have that option of calling or texting via satellite. I guess if you're on T-Mobile, you could do both. But eventually, in a couple years. But at least you have.
Yeah, what did you think of that? The satellite SOS feature coming out right after the T-Mobile Starlink event.
It is interesting that both were working on it at the same time. The phone manufacturer and the phone seller, or I guess the service seller. I guess they're both services. But it's interesting because if you're on T-Mobile, you get all these really cool features. You'll be able to text and eventually call on satellite through Starlink. And if, according to Elon, if Apple and Starlink mesh well together, or at least decide to cooperate, you could potentially have a crazy amount of satellites above you already that are being used by people who have the dishes on their house as something that you get to use as a phone user, not even on T-Mobile, but just like on AT&T, Verizon, Mint, or anything else. And you have that ability to use someone else's service, in which you're already doing that right now, but just another, like you could be out in the middle of nowhere and use that service, which I think is fantastic. It's a safety feature that should be standard. I'm a little bit tentative on the idea that in 2 years they make it a paid subscription, but then I think at that point,
that felt weird. Yeah.
What if you just buy, I mean, if you think about it, most of the market buys a phone every 2 years. Well, maybe not most of the market, but I should say a good amount of people buy a phone every 2 years. They usually re-up and upgrade every 2 years to get the new thing.
Around 2.
And maybe that's the way to go around it, is if you get a new iPhone, you get 2 years of free satellite connectivity for those emergency situations. So you're skirting.
We don't know if they'll maintain that deal. They might reduce it to 1 year with the 15 and then no years with the 16.
Yeah, it becomes its own
I just wish they would detail like the pricing. I'd be curious, like, because what's dumb to me is the concept, and I don't think this is what they're doing, but they haven't clarified. Like, you should not be stuck in an emergency situation when the iPhone could save you, but because you didn't renew a subscription, now it cannot save you.
Oh no.
Like, that's dumb. That should not be a thing. He died because he forgot to hit the renew button in the satellite SOS tab in settings. It's like, let him use the feature, because I understand that the feature costs money, and there's like people that transcribe if you do a call or whatever. The feature costs money. Just bill them afterwards. Like send a bill like a month later or something. Like if you got to charge for it, that's
pay
fine.
Per
but
use
don't
versus used or pay to use. Yeah, instead of pay to use.
Yeah, pay to use, pay per use. Pay
I'm totally,
per use versus.
I think
pay
you guys
to
get what I'm
use.
saying. Yeah, pay versus pay for usage. No. Goodness, I'm gonna get tangled up in my own words. Pay
I knew what
per
you mean.
pay per use is better because you've used it, now you're paying for it, versus a subscription. I guess is what I'm getting at is.
Right.
You might use it one day, you don't know, and then it's like, well, I haven't.
Better subscribe now, just in case.
Yeah, I haven't gone backpacking in years, and then what do you know? The 1 year that you don't have the subscription, you go backpacking, and then you end up like 127 hours and all that, and you're like, oh crap, satellites? No. Okay.
And it's kind of fun to try to figure out the differences between iPhone 14 satellite communication versus Starlink T-Mobile communication. So it's like Globalstar is using a special wavelength that only communicates with antennas that the iPhone 14 has. Starlink is using an existing wavelength so that the satellite can basically act like a cell tower, which means you don't need the 14. It could work on the 13 or the 12 or maybe earlier, but at least those two for sure. And then I think the way I understood it when I watched the Starlink event is that you could do text and calls. And I don't think that it's like a special like SOS only type service. I think because the Starlink constellation is so much more widespread and everywhere that it's likely to be more of a, you can send, basic texts even to people for non-emergency situations, or make a phone call even if you're not in trouble. And that's just going to be included with most T-Mobile plans. Whereas the way Apple was pitching it was like, you are only going to activate this if something's wrong. Like, you're not going to just text people out of boredom or like, how are you guys doing?
I'm just on top of Kilimanjaro. How are you?
Right, where you could just have casual phone calls. Based on the fact that they're saying it's free for 2 years, and they even have that UI thing where they're like, hold the phone.
It's like a little Find My.
A special way. I'm like, that's the outcome of Globalstar, which, in case you guys didn't know, is a much smaller satellite constellation than Starlink. Like,
so you're going to have to search for that satellite for a bit.
Yeah. It's going to be probably a bit harder, and it's only going to be in emergencies, whereas I think what Starlink is offering might be a bit easier for basic communication, non-emergency texting, and all that. So it's not I don't think one is necessarily better than the other. Like on one hand, the iPhone 14 system is going to be ready a lot sooner. It should be working, I think they said November. Whereas the Starlink feature, while more widespread and I think more accessible, is, as far as we know, going to require a T-Mobile membership at first. And it's not going to be ready until they send up the V2 satellites, which aren't up yet.
Yeah, it's all dependent on Starship at this point, in which
pretty much
we don't know when that's going to launch necessarily. It could be next month. It could be in a year. Or 2 years.
It could get pushed back further. The global star stuff, it's so Apple, right? They're like, no, we're going to do it when it's ready and it's available,
right?
Versus SpaceX being like, oh, this will happen someday. We'll get to it. But both will take advantage. I think both will be useful. In
Definitely. I think both are warranted to, or both deserve to exist right now. I think safety is paramount, especially for those that want to adventure. We only have a finite amount of time on this earth. Go explore it. Go check it out. Go see all the crevices and oceans and everything that you want to see. Go do it, please. We are but very tiny ants on a cue ball flinging around a nuclear reaction in a corner of our galaxy in this universe that we live in. Go check out that
I didn't realize I was on the Joe Rogan Experience. Go check out that pot.
I'm done.
In case the audience couldn't tell, we're both very tired because we had to get up at dark 30.
It's been a very long week. I'll explain some of it on EV and the reasons why. I'm just as exhausted as Drew right now. But
we're both very tired. Randy and Nick are so tired they couldn't even make it today.
No. Randy's having too much fun enjoying the heat wave in San Diego. Nick's having too much fun getting destroyed by weather in Texas. And we're getting destroyed by exhaustion. But
in case anyone didn't know, I wanted to just let everybody be aware. Nick was in my live stream this morning and he notified me that he ordered a silver 14 Pro Max 256 gig on launch day. So that's a Nick phone, and he should be getting it, and he will be keeping it, unlike me. So shout out to Nick for upgrading.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see, hopefully next week, if we have Randy on, assuming that either he's back. He should be back home next week, if I recall.
I think he should be back, yeah.
To see if he actually ordered a 14 for review, or...
Last year he ordered like 4 iPhones on accident.
Yeah, maybe. His wife was telling us, why do you need a 14 when we were down there? He's like, well, to review, maybe to own.
We just make podcasts and videos so that we can justify our Apple addictions. That's really what this is all about. Well, maybe I gotta review it. Come on, I need to.
I couldn't even swing the Apple Watch Ultra for my wife. She's like, the way that you're telling me about it, it sounded like you wanted it. I'm like, yeah, but we've already spent too much. And she's like, good. I'm like,
good.
Okay, sweet. What was I trying to say before? Yeah,
my wife was laughing so hard at all of the announcements. I really wanted to film her reacting to all the new stuff because I think it would be funny, but she doesn't like being on camera too much. So she was like, no, I don't want to be in a video. But seriously, like we were waiting for, we were at a grocery store doing like the pickup thing where you just wait in the car and they bring out the groceries, and I was like, this is the new 14 Pro, and she was like, what is that? And I was like, that's gross. It's like, no, it's purple. She's like, that's not purple, that's gray. It's like, maybe in certain lighting. And then I showed her the Apple Watch Ultra. She was like, Ultra? What are these names they keep coming up with? She was so like annoyed.
What, are they gonna make an AirTag Max next?
She was like, wait, is that the Plus or the Pro? And I was like, that's the Plus, that's the Pro, that's the Pro Max. And she was like, ugh. And then there's an Ultra too. And I'm like, yeah, I agree. These suffixes are getting they're getting out of control. There's so many add-on names to everything.
I think
that's the Plus. That's the
least
Pro. That's the Pro Max.
It is kind of weird. Like they've kind of gone from Plus to Max with the phones, but this lineup does make sense with the naming, and it doesn't really confuse people too much because it's like, oh, I thought I was getting the 14 Max. It's like, well, there's only a 14 Pro Max. Do you want that?
That's why I wish they would just drop the Pro. Like, I think it would make more sense to say There's one suffix for each phone. There's either like the nothing, iPhone 14. There's the 14 Plus, 14 Pro, 14 Max. So it's like each suffix specifies which phone it is.
Okay, so you want the Max.
I got the Pro.
Drop the
Which Pro?
Name. Okay.
I don't want there to be a follow-up. I don't want there to be... I got the bigger one. Which one? The Plus or the Max? You know, that annoys me.
That's what I do every single time I talk with my buddies who actually work at Apple. I'm like, oh, is that the new 13? And they're like, well, it's the Max. I'm like, oh, so it's the Pro Max. Yes. Oh, okay, cool. Have you liked it?
I always refer it when I'm talking to people that aren't really well-versed in the tech community. They're like, which iPhone is that? I just say, it's the Max. I don't say, it's the Internet Telephone 13 Professional Maximum.
The XM 2000Y. Whatever Sony calls their headphones. Yeah, it's way too much. Or like the iMac. It's like, my mom did... I'm selling my iMac to my mom, but I guess I don't know if I divulged that in the last podcast or the podcast before.
I think a couple weeks you did.
But she doesn't even care. She's like, is it an iMac? I'm like, yeah. She's like, okay, good. She doesn't care about storage. She doesn't care about...
Computer. Like, yes.
Yes, that's it. Where I guess if they switched with the iPhones, maybe with the 15s, it's maybe the perfect time if they wanted to fix the naming scheme, which it doesn't sound like they want to, or maybe they are.
No.
They have a key decision coming up that they could fix it. If they choose that, that's great, and hopefully they stick with it. If not, then, well, nothing's really changed. But
Apple changes their minds on the naming all the time.
To go with 14 Pro, or 14 Plus, 14 Pro. I'm already confused, right? 14
like,
Plus.
It's not confusing. Wait.
But yeah, so I'm excited for I'm excited for my 14 Pro Silver 512 gigabyte.
I'm glad. I just hope it gets to you on launch day, because I know where you live, there's been shipping delays before.
I think it will get to me on launch day. I mean, the display and the Mac Studio got to me earlier than expected, than what they originally told me.
That's good.
I don't think that'll be the same for the phone, because it ships or gets delivered on the day that they usually tell you. Or I don't think they're going to be delivering phones the day before.
No. Unless you're in New Zealand or Australia.
At least for my location, which is why it's kind of the bummer that I explained earlier, is that whenever I get something delivered, it's never really in the morning. It's usually in the evening. So
Same here.
Yeah, even if we're doing the podcast and you're showing off your cool new phone that you're reviewing, I guess, I'll just get to sit and watch and kind of frown a little bit like Nick has in the past. Of like...
Usually I'm the one frowning, because Nick and Randy were always ahead of me, so they would always get to unbox before me.
True.
But no, I'm doing in-store pickup. In fact, I think this time, I haven't quite figured out the details, but I think I want to pick it up in store and then unbox it in the car, edit the video, and post it before I drive home to save on time. Because typically, when the new product comes out, I either have to wait for it to deliver, and it typically doesn't deliver until 4 or 5 p.m., which... I don't want to work at that point anyway, because it's been a whole day and everything.
It's still hot.
I'm tired, and it's hot and everything, and I'm like, I'm used to being done with work by then, so when a phone shows up at 5 o'clock, I'm like, oh, now I got another 3 hours to book out. But, yeah. So, I might film with this. I've been filming a lot of videos in the car anyway, and I think I'll just find a good setup so that I can unbox it in here, and I'll bring my MacBook. Since I've been editing videos in the car too, then I can finish the whole video and upload it before I even go home. And then I should have a pretty relevant upload time, because most of the time I have to unbox my stuff like hours after everybody else got theirs. Right. And this will still be hours, but not as crazy bad. It might be around like 9 p.m. depending on... No, last time I was there, I did a speed test and it was really fast. So I think my cell data should be good. But
good. Well, I'm looking forward to it.
I'll just upload it via Mint.
I'll be.
Yeah, me too.
You'll probably have the video out right before I get mine. So it'll be nice to kind of see what the Max looks like in its box, and then maybe I can appreciate how small my Pro is when I unbox it, because we're getting the same color. We're both getting silver, so.
Oh, that's right.
It'll be the
same. Usually, I
experience.
tried to not get the same color as other people, but. I don't know. It seemed like everyone was going with space black, and space black is darker than graphite, but still I thought it would just look a little too similar to my 13. And when I'm doing side-by-sides and videos and stuff, I want to have like an easy way to tell that's the new one, that's the old one. So
true.
I
It
mean,
would be nice
I'm sure
to compare
space
the
black
colors,
is good,
but
yes,
it is a smarter way of doing it if you're keeping it for at least a month, just to show.
Yeah.
All right, this is white one that is new. This is black one which is old.
that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping I don't fall in love with Dynamic Island because I want to stay true to my word.
It's all right, Drew. If it makes you feel better, you can visit me more, and you can experience the Dynamic Island on this side where I'm at. You can join me on my island, and
I'll just play with Mike's phone every once in a while.
immediately when he comes over,
itch.
give me your phone.
Give me. I don't know if you've done this. When did you get? No, I'm not sure you have. But how do you transfer your phone key for the Tesla to the new iPhone?
Never done that before.
Okay.
So it'll be a
We're
new
both
experience
going
for
into
both
this
of us.
blind.
I think you'll know.
Also, have you ever
before me.
used eSIM? Have you used
Never
eSIM before?
Every single phone that I've owned, in which I've got some of them right here, it's always been like, will it work?
Normal SIM.
Because
I think they call it a PSIM
a piece.
for physical.
Maybe. I think the Pixel had maybe the smoothest transition because I was coming from the S7, so it was like Android to Android, and
Right.
the data. I think it went fine. I think all I had to do is plug in the two phones and it was done.
Yeah.
But yeah, going from like the 5S.
Are you worried about eSIM?
No, I don't think so.
Good.
I think it'll actually make things a lot easier coming forward because
Really?
all at that point is it's just a software dump, right, from one to the other. Maybe you still have to connect the two wires, but like it's still just going to be like, okay, now it's on this phone. And if not, if it's like through the cloud and all that, or maybe not the cloud, but like you just connect the Wi-Fi and change it. I don't think it's going to be necessarily a big thing. I've never been one to take out the SIM card. The only time that I have was actually recently, and that was because the S7 Edge, I was trying to get into it to get some photos, couldn't figure out the password, and then ended up factory resetting it. And I'm like, well, maybe there's a way of taking out the SIM, and maybe it's still there. No, I factory reset everything, so nothing's there anymore. But I did find out how to, or that was, I think, the one time that I did actually open up a phone and look at the SIM card. I'm like, oh, cool.
Okay.
I'm never going to look at this again.
I'm used to swapping a lot. Like, anytime I review a phone, it's always easier. It's always been so simple to me to just pop out the physical one and pop it in. And then when I'm done reviewing it, I pop it back in the old one. I've never done a transfer from a physical SIM to an eSIM before. So I know Mint Mobile supports eSIM, but I'm curious to see how they react when I'm like, I want to try this, but then I want to go back. Like, can you reactivate the old SIM when I'm done with this? I don't know if they're used to people doing that. Did you think it was too soon to remove the physical SIM, or do you think it's about time?
I think Apple does things in strange times, right? It's either like they're ready or they're not. With like they started the whole charge brick thing, and they felt like it was the right time to do it, and you get a bunch of backlash. And it's gonna be the same for everything else: removing the headphone jack, removing the SIM card. There's always gonna be backlash. Is the market ready for it right now? Probably not, but I think Apple's ready to deal with all the backlash and ensure people follow them in this first step to eSIMs, in which we've had eSIMs around for a while with carriers. It's now actually like
it's not
the phone doesn't support it anymore. Like you can't back up on a physical SIM. So I have no problem with it because I've never really been in that life of changing out SIMs. I think for those who do, it's going to be a little bit of a struggle, kind of like with the headphone jack leaving. It's like you either get an adapter of some sort, find some way to get in like through a dongle or whatever on the bottom port, or something else. Like I'm sure there will be ways
AirPods.
to get you'll be able to get around it, but for me, it's not an issue. For those that do, I feel sorry for them, like you and.
I bet a lot of people pre-ordered that don't realize it doesn't have one. I bet that's probably not known by it.
I think many, like my mother, it's like, is it an iPhone or is it a computer? Yes. Okay. That's all I want. And then
I just don't know how it works. Like maybe someone in the audience can explain who knows more about it. But like, if you have a physical SIM in your old phone and you're upgrading to your new one, do they do they convert the physical SIM to an eSIM just during the setup process, where you just sign into your Apple ID and then it goes port your old number into an eSIM and then you hit OK? Or do you have to like download the Verizon or T-Mobile app and contact them and say, hey, I want to transfer my SIM, and they go, 1 moment, we'll get back to you on that. And like if that whole process takes longer, it's probably going to be pretty frustrating. But I don't know if it's just a simple thing in the setup. It might be very simple.
That's something that I get to experience. This is the first time I've bought an iPhone. Well, is it the actual first time I've bought it? Yeah, I guess it is the first time I've bought an iPhone for myself from the Apple Store. In the past was the Space Gray 5S I got from Verizon, and the same with the 11 Pro I got from Verizon. But this one was a heck of a story because they took like 2 hours, basically. The people at the Verizon store took 2 hours to set this thing up for me. Don't know why it took 2 hours. Yep. It took them forever to even find the phone. Yeah, I'm like, I don't want to deal with going in the store. My mom, I was talking to her last night, and she's like, so you're going to go in the Verizon store and like buy it? I'm like, well, it's not going to be in the store tomorrow. You're going to have to like go on the site or call in or something like that. I don't want to deal with that. Actually, you can't even call in at 5 a.m. So I don't want to deal with that. I don't want to deal with Verizon. I'd rather buy it with the Verizon eSIM chip in it or whatever.
Right. So did you order yours unlocked, or did you order it with
I ordered
Verizon
it with Verizon, and all they did was ask for my number, and then because this was during the pre-order or yesterday before you even do it, like you can prepare or save the order for
pre-order.
The pre-order. In that, they did send me a text message through the phone number that I gave them, because you had to give a number and a zip code. And then from there, they're like, okay, we're sending you a code, a one-time code, to verify that it's you and that you're getting a new phone through or with this Verizon number. And did that, and then it's like, okay, cool. Yeah, you're ready for 5 a.m. tomorrow. And then 5 a.m. came around, and I just had to put in the credit card information, which was already there through Apple Card, and whether I wanted to pick it up in store or deliver it, and that was it. So it'll be interesting to see if there's any hiccups when I get the phone, if I actually have to go on Verizon and be like, yes, it's me on this account. I've had this 11 for like 3 years now. I'm on this 14. I'm on this plan. I think it's
going to be a nightmare. I think launch day next week is going to be like a bunch of people that don't know what they're doing. How do I get my phone number to show? All the carriers are going to be swamped. Everybody's going to be like overloaded with customer service calls, and Apple will be like, well, that's because the carriers just need to get their act together. And it's like, yeah, I know. You think they are smart. You think the carriers are logical and reasonable, but that's my biggest problem with the SIM card removal. Is like when they removed the headphone jack, I knew that Apple had solutions in check. It's like, okay, you can either use the adapter or AirPods. And I wanted AirPods long before they even unveiled them. I was like, I just want what Apple headphones are, but wireless. Please make a wireless pair of headphones, Apple. And they came out with them, and the pairing was super easy. And I was like, yes, perfect. I'll just buy that and call it a day. The problem with the SIM card removal is it's requiring for the crappy carriers to come up with a solution, which I do not trust. And I don't think they'll come up, not all of them at least. Some probably have it all figured out and it works fine. But especially overseas, because a lot of people were complaining that, like, I buy my iPhone in the US, but I go to Europe for months out of the year, or I go to Asia and I have to use different carriers there. And a lot of them don't have eSIM support yet. So this is going to be a big headache for when I'm traveling. And I was like, yeah, I guess this is a way of Apple trying to accelerate adoption, but then outside of the US, they still offer the SIM tray. So I'm like, you're not trying that hard. You're kind of trying, but
I think it'll push a lot of retailers overseas to adopt the eSIM quicker, which is good. It's just bad for those in this generation who are getting it, who are traveling as well, or
even more reason to get the 13.
Right, but it's definitely like there'll be those growing pains with this generation. Hopefully for the 15, it's that nice golden child. Maybe that's why they pushed eSIM for the 14, so that everyone's got this big headache. So that when the 15 comes out, again, I've got my tinfoil
You think the
hat
15 will be no SIM?
No SIM
everywhere?
with hopefully everywhere. But I mean, at least we've had 1 year without an eSIM, so there's been a lot of carriers who have converted their thoughts and practices over to this way of technology with an eSIM. And at that point, hopefully it's ironed out enough so that when the 15 comes out, it's like, this is the best phone iPhone's ever made, and you can use it anywhere and all that. Apple will get billions and billions of dollars, and I don't know. People will not have
I still think
headaches.
they should get into the... Yeah, I still think they should get into the carrier business. Like, I think it would simplify the iPhone experience so much more if they started their own MVNO but they probably have so many contracts and deals with the carriers that they don't want to compete with them because they would get in trouble or something. But
sure, maybe
still
like
think
if they had enough money buying up, like, I don't think they could buy T-Mobile at this point, but buying up like AT&T or something like that might not be a bad idea, because then you can you've got your own carrier now. Get the Apple service instead of the T-Mobile
Apple
service.
TNT.
Apple TNT.
Yeah, I think
Also-
it would be wise for them, but they would probably get in a lot of antitrust trouble. I bet the government would get mad.
Yeah, I guess it's more of how far do they want to go to get the government mad, and whether they can actually stake a claim in court of, no, we're within our right, we're not making a monopoly and all that. When in actuality,
Did you
it's
see
like,
the Tim Cook response to RCS?
That's why I was responding before. Just get an iPhone.
Yeah, that's how he says it.
Just get an iPhone.
Oh, the audacity of that man! Like,
He's a
I don't
businessman.
think I really.
And he believes in
I
his
don't think I
company.
really agree with the sentiment. Like, I don't think supporting RCS is a bad thing, but like a lot of the time, the business world is like a game, and it's about how you can, score more points than the other team, and trying to figure out which phone someone should buy, and Apple's trying to come up with reasons for you to buy an iPhone. But just the fact that someone like went in there and asked him, like, I can't send certain videos to my mom, and he just said, buy an iPhone.
Yeah.
Like,
It's
I thought
kind
it
of
was a joke when I read it.
It's on the same energy level as Jim Farley. If y'all keep up with EV stuff, Jim Farley is the CEO of Ford, and he did, of course, or they had a whole event for the F-150 Lightning, their new EV truck, and in this event, it was like right before deliveries and all that, he says somewhere along the lines of, you can charge other EVs, especially those of your friends who own Teslas. It's kind of on that same energy
you can
level,
charge
like,
your Teslas.
yeah, you can charge your friends Teslas. Like, just buy a Ford, buy an iPhone. Like, why buy anything else? It's just, it's hilarious.
It sounded like one of my skits that my videos start with. It's like, Apple, RCS is so much better than SMS, and it's better than RCS. iMessage. Why don't you just buy? Like, that's what they get joked about saying, but that time he actually did say it, which made me laugh quite a bit.
He wasn't joking at all. He's like,
it wasn't sarcasm.
Just go for it. Yeah. So
that was the first time I think Apple had like a public response to the RCS question. Like, people have been pushing them to do it for months. It feels like years at this point.
Well, they're tired of seeing all
like,
the ads and all the people approaching them. So at this point, they're like, well, we're not going to do anything. Just buy a phone. Buy our phone.
They're like, why should we? I mean, while I think it would be a good thing, and I'm not against them supporting it, I just think that you have to make the argument that, like, how does it help Apple?
Not much. No.
Does it, like,
it means that you have to cooperate,
anything,
and they've never really been one to cooperate. They've always been on their own path, and yeah, they adopt other people's technologies in a way, or they have their own spin on it, but they're not out there being like, oh yes, we should probably allow for iBook to work on the Flip 3, like, and work well.
Yeah.
Like, why?
It's like, if at the end of the day, we're basically asking Apple to make Android users' life easier.
Mm-hmm.
That's ultimately what is being requested. And Apple's like, if anything, this would encourage people to not buy an iPhone.
Mm-hmm.
So, as nice as it would be, and I personally don't think the company would be in trouble. I don't think that's the sole reason people buy iPhones, but maybe Apple's not willing to give up any one of those straws that they have on the iPhone team. That could be a really major one for them.
Sure.
So they're just like, yeah, no, that was the first time someone actually like directly asked them, and Tim's response seems like a pretty hard no. It's like, we totally could, but we're not going to because it helps us in no competitive way. And I'm kind of shocked by this response, honestly, after the antitrust cases, because I'm thinking like they might get in trouble for that kind of statement. Like the government might say like, so you're in favor of not allowing, your competition to have a competitive edge on iMessage, like you're not enabling them to come up with a system that would be more streamlined and easier to send pictures and be in group chats and eliminate the whole green bubble group chat problem. But the fact that Tim felt that confident was just kind of impressive to me. Like, I don't agree, but I'm impressed.
Yeah.
I mean, like, wow.
It's definitely showing their intentions in their hand.
Yeah.
They could definitely get into some sticky legal stuff. Buy it. They could definitely get into some sticky situations, but I don't know. I think it's well within their right of having an opinion on it. And that just means it opens them up to that situation where they might get forced to help out with RCS integration with iPhone, which will be a bummer, but that just might be the future we have to go toward. And it would be nice to eventually have that ability to, especially with my friend who refuses to adopt Apple, me not having to email through Gmail a picture that is higher quality than I send something. He's like, is that corn?
Yeah.
I can't tell.
Right. Because it's this old standard. Yeah.
Yeah. So
I feel like most people have just moved to either WhatsApp or Messenger or are already on iMessage. But if Apple did support RCS, I wonder how many people would actually leave those third parties. Like, how many people would ditch Messenger and WhatsApp or Telegram in favor of RCS if it was available?
Apple could potentially be holding those companies up from bankruptcy just by refusing. In which that sounds like the most Apple sheep response ever. Oh yeah, Apple refusing to cooperate with Google saves Meta or whatever. It's like, what?
Because Apple loves Meta. Those two companies get along really
Apple's
well.
actually doing a good thing by not adopting RCS, so be thankful. Like, this is great. You should praise Tim Cook for it. Like, a very weird logic process that I just went through right there. But
it is. But you're onto something, because I thought similarly about how we get mad at Apple when they enter certain fields because we're saying how that's anti-competitive just because Apple made an AirTag. Now Tile's in trouble. That's not fair. You can't do that. But it doesn't go the other way, because you notice no one was talking about how Apple removing the charge brick from the iPhone boxes probably made Anchor sales shoot up like crazy.
Right.
Like, isn't that great for third parties, the fact that they're no longer including that accessory? I mean, Brazil's ticked off because they're like, no, every phone comes with a charge brick. But by not including accessory, like they used to include headphones with every iPhone, they don't do that anymore.
No.
Doesn't that encourage the sales of third-party headphones because now it doesn't come with one? Like, they don't get credit for that.
Or at least you're not really either maybe not forced, but oh, I guess I'll just use these Apple headphones for a bit and then maybe give them to my little brother and then I'll buy the headphones that I want. Instead, it's forcing the user to, okay, if I'm going to get this phone, I'm going to get these headphones with it. Or in, I guess, today's standards, it's more of, if I'm going to, what am I trying to say here now? Basically, what I'm trying to get at is we're in a very maybe not Cold War situation with these companies of who's going to jump first on who's going to start litigation or who's going to cave and allow for cooperation to occur. But it is an interesting situation throughout of like what this reality has kind of turned into with these tech companies, where you're capable of doing something interesting with one company but not the other, and you have that freedom of choice, but it comes at those faults. But you still have options, but they may not be the best options. It's it's a grab or not cash grab. It's a grab bag of like
grab bag.
You might get something good, or it kind of just depends on what your ecosystem is and what you're willing to expand your horizons to. And these tech companies have so much influence over that choice that it may not matter at the end of the day, or it may matter significantly at the end of the day whether you're able to send a picture of a funny cat to your friend and have them laugh or not, right?
Apple has too much power.
Yeah, what gifts you will have at the palm or at your fingertips.
Right.
I don't know.
Oh, well said.
I
get what you're saying.
It's a funny situation, but
it is.
It is funny thinking about now. The ecosystem. Someone on the Discord asked like, "Oh, what Apple products do you have?" I'm like, I don't have that many Apple products, right? I've got an iPhone. I've got the iMac. I've got the AirPods. I've got the AirTags. I've got the watch. I've got the HomePods, and I've got a HomePod Mini, and I've got
Apple
the
TV.
Studio Display. I've got the Apple. What happened?
Oh, wait a minute. What happened? It's everywhere. You had like an Apple explosion in your house when you met me, I think.
Yeah, I think you've cost me a significant amount of money, so you're going to get the bill at the end of the year.
This is your Apple Sheet bill.
Right.
That's funny.
Oh, geez.
Alrighty. Well, I'm excited to get hopefully Randy's and maybe Nick's thoughts next week if they can make time for the show. But nice. I appreciate you making time today, Mike. I'm glad you got your phone ordered, at least for launch day. Just buy an iPhone. That's it, people. And we hope you have a good week. Take care. Bye-bye.